This is the Tony Legend Show, ManchesterRadioOnline.com, Green Day from the album American Idiot. That was American Idiot. Alright then, coming up to 7 minutes to 10 now. Very sorry, Keelan, that we've left it so late, but it is great to welcome you back to the show. Keelan Balderson, how you doing?
It's good to be back, and it's good to see the show back.
Yes, I had a few months off there. I was DJing and doing radio in Ibiza. We won a DJ award in Ibiza this year for Best Media, something I'm quite proud of in a lot of ways, but also slightly ashamed of in other ways, because out there having fun in the sun is not really doing much for the Infowar, but it does mean I come back fresh and ready to go again, and I'm quite happy with the nice balance. How are you doing, Keelan? Are you still a domestic Infowar extremist participating in treason against the New World Order?
I am indeed. I've done quite a lot since the summer. You know, I produced a 4-hour documentary on 7/7, got Resistance Radio going with Mr. Brit from YouTube. Lots of good things have been happening.
And I listened to your podcast of Resistance Radio show recently of driving through the Highlands. Great job, very interesting. Tell us about Resistance Radio and the idea behind it.
Well, it's the brainchild of a guy called Mr. Brit from YouTube. He's quite a popular YouTuber in the truther community, if that's what we want to call it. And it's basically a network of different truth, alternative shows under the one banner. It's got my show, the WideShut webcast, on Tuesdays. I try and give a UK perspective on things. We've got a new host, Travis, coming in on Monday. We also have a veteran 9/11 researcher, Todd Fletcher, who's actually been the assistant to David Ray Griffin, and he has his show on Thursdays, keeping the 9/11 thing out there. We have the Mr. Brit show on Fridays, and actually neck and neck with your show on Sundays is Lee Woodberg's The Evolution Continues, and he's also produced a film on 7/7 and 9/11, done a few presentations. So it's just, you know, a bunch of like-minded researchers trying to get the information out there.
And tell us how folks can listen to Resistance Radio, how they can find it and find the podcasts and stuff.
Yeah, well, we have the live show stream at 8 p.m. At blogtalkradio.com/Resistance Radio, and we also have a website ourselves, which is resistradio.com, where you can get all the information.
And you also write news issues for your website, wideshut.co.uk. I'm just on there now, and some of the featured articles include a girl's bribed to take dangerous and pointless HPV vaccine. Tell us about this.
Well, first off, I'm not an expert on vaccines or anything, but all the information in that article is taken directly from the vaccine makers themselves, from their inserts, from the guidelines. There's quotes in there from Dr. Diane Harper, who was the lead researcher in the development of the vaccine. So when she says things like 70% of all HPV infections resolve themselves without treatment within a year, then I think it's quite important, because she helped make the vaccine, especially when the government is trying to vaccinate all young women. But the story itself is just another tactic they'll use in order to get people vaccinated. So what they're doing is bribing young women and girls with high street shopping vouchers if they'll take the vaccine. And of course, our moronic media decide to turn the debate into whether it will make young girls more promiscuous or not. But they're missing the point. The debate should be whether the vaccine is safe and effective, and I've laid out in that article that it basically isn't safe and effective.
We're having some gremlins in the system here, Keelan. Unfortunately, the line cut off a couple of times there, but I can still hear you in the headphones, but it cut off just briefly on the line. I don't know whether maybe you've got someone keeping their eye on you. You've been maybe shaking the establishment to its very core with your radio show and website. I really wanted to have you on for longer tonight, but we got caught up with Brian Gerrish for 45 minutes, and also a surprise last-minute addition to tonight's show, Jim Corr, who joined us for 35 minutes or so earlier on, and had to get those guys on because they're just so prolific in their exposés on the New World Order and all that sort of the information that we cover on this show. But Keelan, we'll have you on more again, hopefully next week if you're able to do that, but we'll just keep going right through until 10 o'clock. and until the next show comes in here to Manchester Radio Online. The body scanner scam is another thing that you've been covering. What's your opinions on the body scanners? And it's good to see that a lot of Americans are very against this and speaking out and resisting the full naked body scan.
Yeah, well, the body scammers, well, it is a scam. They came in, obviously, after the Christmas Day underpants bomber, and it was kind of preached as the only way we could have stopped this guy from carrying out his devastating attack. But, of course, their logic is flawed because, as it came out from the Committee of Homeland Security, this supposed terrorist was actually escorted directly onto the plane without a passport. He didn't sneak past security, he was led on the plane. And of course, before that, the scanners were already ready, and this was the thing they needed to get them in place.
And they were actually, the body scanners were introduced in Manchester in October or November of last year, a couple of months before the alleged underpant bomber. And I actually interviewed Russell Craig from Manchester Airport, and he told me that when they were doing the research of how many people were accepting the body scannings before Christmas Day, the number was a lot lower, but it jumped way up to over 90% after Christmas Day, after this false flag attack on a Detroit-bound plane. In numbers, that's proof of how these events can further the agenda of body scanning and stuff like that.
Exactly. I mean, and the body scanners themselves, there's been a few studies on them, and they can cause cancer, they increase your risk of cancer, they mess with your DNA. There's all sorts of problems with them, and pregnant women and children are being forced through them based on lies.
Indeed, and I'm going to New York next month, and I just hope that the TSA do not make me try and go through a body scanner, or there's going to be trouble.
Let's hope you're not on a no-fly list.
Well, we'll see. Unfortunately, I've already been to the United States and I was unaware of this, but they do fingerprint you like a criminal on entry. So, yeah, I was guilty of being a person when I arrived in the United States, and before I could leave JFK Airport, I had to be fingerprinted. And if I hadn't known that, I probably wouldn't have went, to be honest, just out of principle. But I was weak, and I was going to Miami, and I was excited, and I submitted to their fingerprinting, and hopefully I can be a bit stronger if they ask me to do the body scan. But we'll see about that, we'll see. Finishing up, Keelan, and I do really want to have you on next week if you're able, and we'll get into a lot more detail. But tell us about your documentary you made on the London bombing, 7/7, The Big Picture.
Yeah, well, I decided to do that film after I was last on your show, because we were talking about 7/7, and I was trying to make the case that, inside job or not, the Western governments still have decades of history of sponsoring Islamic terrorism and manipulating it for their own gain. And most importantly, in the years before 7/7, it was official UK policy to allow Muslim extremists and radical preachers to operate within Britain as long as they didn't target Britain itself. It was called the Covenant of Security. So you had groups like Al-Mujahirun, which became Islam for UK, and these groups sort of multiplied under this policy without intervention. And eventually at least two of the alleged 7/7 bombers, Khan and Tanweer, became tied up in these groups. So my point on the last time I was on is that even though, it could have been inside job or not, there were still policies in place that could have radicalised these people. And as I did more research, as well as the day itself, not really, there's not really evidence that they did do it, but at the same time, there's evidence that they were influenced by intelligence informants and all these different groups. So, I kind of took two routes with it, and both lead back to the government. All roads lead to Rome, as they say.
Indeed. Keelan, I'm going to have to leave it there. It's just gone 10 o'clock, and there seems to be a problem with cutting off. I don't know what the issue is there. It's just went a couple of times. But I don't like to bore people with technical stuff, and I don't like to be too conspiracy theorist and say someone's messing up our phone system. But it hasn't happened all night, and it hasn't happened actually before. But it's just we've just lost you for about 2 seconds, 3 times there in about 20 seconds. So thank you so much for coming on the show, man. Sorry we only got 10 minutes. But
No worries.
we will have you on again for longer, and we do really appreciate your work. You've been a bit of a star in the UK Infowar with your website and with the Resistance Radio, so we appreciate all the good work you do, and hopefully, are you good to come on the show next week?
Yeah, no problem.
Alright, no worries. Well, Keelan, we'll have you on and we'll give you a better crack of the whip, as it were, and thanks again for joining us tonight on Manchester Radio Online.
No problem, Tony. I'll see you next week.
No worries. And if folks want to check out Keelan's website, go to www.wideshut.co.uk. That's all we have time for here tonight. From me, Tony Legend, this has been the Tony Legend Show. And this is Manchester Radio Online. I will be back on air next Sunday night from 8 p.m. Until then, be good.